if not the entire state. Okay? So, that says I have a lot of experience, but real experience, in the trenches, in the gutter, with the blood and the guts and the beer. What you need at the top is a real cop, and I'm it. Now, I can stand up here and tell you what's going to happen or what I want to have happen. I'm going to clean out all the corruption and all the scandalous stuff that's going on in this police department. And all of us could probably say the same thing. But the proof is in the pudding. What have you done in the past? What is going on now that you are trying to clean up this police department? Well, I've got a 2011 federal lawsuit against the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and 14 of their high-ranking officers in the police department, plus the sheriff, of course. Okay? Now, that's been going on since January of 2011. The key is, why? How come then? Well, I reached the point where I could not go along with the lies anymore. There's a little saying, the moment that you become aware of a lie and you don't do anything about it, and you go along with it, then you become part of that lie. And that is so true in police work. There are so many times, so many things and so many people that would force you to sell your soul, to violate your oath. And once you do it, the rest of them is just history. They own you. I've never done that. I've never sold my soul. Truth is everything to me. So, the 2011 federal lawsuit started because the department wanted me to lie about a major home invasion, robbery, sexual assault series in Las Vegas that victimized probably 8 to 10 families. One of the families happened to be a police lieutenant, wife, and young child. So obviously, we're pretty enthusiastic. We want to find these guys. It's funny though, being the most senior detective in the entire department and the most senior officer now in the entire department, they didn't want my help. Right. They didn't want the senior squad that I was on to help. We all volunteered. Why? Over the years, I've noticed whenever they didn't want me around on a case, there's some funny business that's going to go on. Well, it reached that point. There was a lot of funny business. Yeah, they got 5 of them. Probably about 14 suspects, but they got 5. Out of those 5, they initiated 5 search warrants. Tremendous amount of evidence was recovered. Only problem is the suspects all used mask, gloves, and condoms. So your forensic evidence is not there. Well, I happen to notice that evidence that they recovered just had a break in the chain of evidence. Okay, so it was tainted. It was useless. I knew about it. I was called in to lie along with all the other 33 detectives about that break in that chain of custody on that evidence, and I refused. From that point on, went downhill for me. I was targeted. Eventually, I became sick from it. That's why the federal lawsuit is there. Now, one more thing. On the federal lawsuit, 4 murders have resurfaced in July of 2013 in which LVMPD is complicit. I have the evidence, I've got the eyewitnesses, and it didn't come from me. It came from one of the witnesses that I called. Now, there's lots of those kind of situations that are happening, that have happened. The O.J. Simpson case is another one. Omitted evidence. I make a prediction. He's going to walk out of prison February or March of this year a free man. Why? Because they omitted evidence. Exculpatory evidence after I arrested him and obtained a spontaneous confession. Now, obviously, that would have been a very short trial. And I bet you most of you in here didn't even know I'm the person that arrested him. Oh, yeah. He's never subpoenaed. I never testified. And none of my reports made it into that trial. Well, it's going to come out now. So, what you're looking at is the real thing. You must put a real cop at the... That they will not support anyone or any law enforcement agency to help the DHS in putting law-abiding American citizens in detention camps. I back that up wholeheartedly. Yes, ma'am. Quick question.
My lieutenant that I work with is the most person on this department, so you're telling me that you're senior to Craig Clance.
If you had listened to what I said working police officer.
He puts on a uniform every single day.
Understand how this works. There are two levels of police. One are the actual working police officers, patrol, detectives, PSU. Once you promote sergeant, lieutenant, captain, assistant sheriff, undersheriff, whatever, you no longer do police work. You supervise, you administrate, and you policy enforce. You do not get your hands into the dirt anymore. So understand what I say. As a working police officer, I am the most senior in that department, if not in the state. Anybody else? Yes.
What do you think of the more cops tax?
I'm sorry, what?
More cops tax?
Oh, what a joke. More cops tax? Are you kidding me? There is so much waste in that police department, it would make you sick. $42 million for a flawed radio system that everybody knew was flawed at the beginning. I remember when it was first introduced in 2003. We checked it out, some of us that are real investigators, and it was flawed with lawsuits all the way across the United States because it didn't work. We tried to tell everybody, you gotta be kidding. You want to buy a radio that is got all kinds of lawsuits from police departments all across the United States, and you want to bring it here? Somebody must have got their palm greased on this one, because they went ahead and did it, and sure enough, someone got killed because of it, partly, and now we've got to spend another $26 million to try and fix it, and it's still not fixed. Did I answer your question?
That's the last question for now. We'll open it up again. Captain Larry Burns. Larry has been, was employed by the Metropolitan Police Department from 1986 to present. He just recently retired. He was in charge of the Bolton Area Command, and he had my notes up here. In his 27-year career with Metro, Larry has been the commander of SWAT, criminal intelligence supervisor, and a nationally recognized tactical supervisor. Lives in Henderson. He's married. Please welcome Captain Larry Burns.
Well, thank you very much, and what an honor to be here tonight. I think in our first forum all together, and so this is good and new both for all of us. As was mentioned, 27 years on the job. I was 28 years old, so a little older when I hired on at Metro. I came to Vegas from New England to work construction here to build bridges, and I did that primarily until I hired on with Metro. Here, I've worked on the academy staff as an instructor. I've worked in the training of our officers. I've been a gang investigator in my career. I was a 6-year SWAT operator, an officer in SWAT, and became a team leader there, and went back again for 7 years, the longest serving SWAT commander in our community, up until 2009, I believe it was, or 2007, when I left that assignment. I worked in the office of the sheriff, was on executive staff there for 2 years. And most recently, I was promoted about 3 years ago, exactly 3 years ago, and assigned to Bolton Area Command. And I say that, but I want you to know what that is and what that means. Bolton Area Command is the only one that has a name. The rest are geographical by their title. But Bolton has a boundary that starts at I-15 on the east. It goes west to Jones. It comes from North Las Vegas on the north and goes south to Desert Inn. And so the residential side of our inner city, certainly, tremendous experience there. And that has a lot to do with why it is that I'm standing before you. There's a number of things that are really important to me, as I'm sure are important to you, reasons that bring me here to run for sheriff. One of those things, the promise that I make, is to reboot the organization. It is a good organization. It has good people, employees, civilian, and commission. But we have a need to reboot. Last time we did something like that was probably 9/11, and we needed to do that then. We had an enemy that we had never dealt with before, that attacked us in a way in which we had never been attacked before, and we didn't know what would come next. So there was nobody taking point at that point in time. We all needed to get in, and we did. And we received the support of the taxpayer, the community. We retooled to have, in fact, I was working criminal intelligence to create what now we know as Homeland Security functions. And so we did that then, and we needed to do that. But you know, it's been over a decade. We've defined those roles and what they are. But something that the FBI doesn't do, something that the Secret Service doesn't do, something that the United States military does not do, is police in our communities is concern themselves with the traffic that we face with every day. They don't have those responsibilities. I feel it very, very strong because of my experience at Bolton Area Command, an area that was troubled and plagued by violent crime and gangs. An area that was troubled and that became exacerbated because the relationship between Las Vegas Metro and the community was and has been struggling decade after decade. In fact, when I took on the assignment, it had been 25 years since I had worked in the area. And I come back to find out that not much had changed. Even the family names that were notoriously or infamously involved in crime were still involved in the crime. The relationship was one of mistrust from the police department to the community and the community back to the police department. You know what they say about if you continue to do what you've always done and you expect a different result? Probably insanity there, right? But as I took a look, we had poured millions upon millions of dollars into this community in an effort to try to change things, but it stayed static. And so I began and believing that if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. I was committed to make a change, if a change could be made. Or was this a lost cause? Didn't believe it was. So I sat down with the officers, and I got some feedback with them over a number of months to understand if they were in charge, if they lived in this community, what would you do to keep it and make it safe? See, the problem in that segment of the community, not a lot of police officers live there. Then I went into the community. I asked the same question among the politicals, the activists, the church leaders. What would you have us do if you were us? You were in charge. What would you have us do to make your community safer? You know what was amazing to me? Although it was said differently, same things were being said. And so I went to work. I went to work to facilitate that message, which was one simply of ensuring that we created partnerships. We believe in partners with the community, that we would create partnerships that would enhance our effort to protect that community. I ensured that if you worked at Bolden or if you wanted to be a law enforcement officer inside of those boundaries, you needed to work there. Believe as though it were your own community and be a part of the team. Well, let me just cut to the end of this story here, which is one that I'd love to tell you in detail. At the end of 3 short years, including the Stanley Gibson incident that occurred, not in Bolden, but it occurred 1 year into my effort here. It wasn't a protest, it wasn't a march or a riot when that occurred, as tragic as that was. When I asked why it didn't occur, I was told very, very shortly that, listen, we believe that you were trying to make a difference, and we could feel that, and we did not want to do anything that would upset that. The idea was that we have a safer community. That was the goal, and you were committed to it, and so were we. And I appreciated that, but here's the end of the story. You know, we protect, as an example, the Strip. We watch over that property to ensure its safety in every way that we can. Last year, just as I was retiring, violent crime had gone up nearly 22% in that piece of ground. And we poured a lot of resources in there. Bolden Area Command, this troubled area, we had fewer resources than we had when I began, but violent crime was reduced by nearly 7%. And the relationships between the police and the community had improved incredibly to this day, that there is trust more than there has ever been between the community and the police, and there is a better feeling between the police and the community. That's the kind of policing style that I embrace. Safer schools, keep our children safe, focus on traffic, ensure that we do have a transparent review of all use of force incidents, and to make sure that we flatten and focus on every function in the police department to ensure that we are fiscally responsible.
Thank you, Kathy. Good evening. Thank you for coming and speaking. You talked about your years of experience on the SWAT team.
Yes, ma'am.
Recently, the American Bar Association published an article in their magazine about the militarization of our SWAT teams, and that Homeland Security has been giving money to the SWAT teams directly rather than going through the departments, and that the chiefs of police throughout the country no longer have control over the SWAT teams. Is that the case in Metro? And if so, would you work toward continuing that pattern where they don't answer to the chief of police, or would you let them just do their own thing?
Okay, great question. We have in Las Vegas Metro, the SWAT commander is appointed by the sheriff, approved by the sheriff, and maintains his position by the sheriff. I was appointed by Jerry Keller. Bill Young kept me in that position. Doug Gillespie kept me in that position as well. we have an absolute responsibility to report to the sheriff, and the sheriff at any moment, there are no rights to maintain that position, he can move you immediately. The militarization of our SWAT team, or SWAT teams across the country is what it referred to. This becomes a big concern when we talk about community policing. We all believe in that. We talk about getting out of the cars and walking down the streets and speaking to children and our elderly alike. We do not want them to look like G.I. Joe when they're out of their patrol cars. We want them to look like stereotypically what you believe that a police officer looks like. The concern is that when we put ourselves in all that heavy gear and we're driving those big armored vehicles, that maybe there's a psychological effect and we begin to act like that role instead of those public servants that we certainly are. I am so proud to say that within Las Vegas, while we have to be vigilant and we ebb and flow, that we are very, very careful to ensure that those men get out of that heavy equipment, that they dress down to what is the uniform. It is greens, tactical greens that they do wear, but that they have functions within the community regularly so that they do not forget who it is that they are, and our community understands that they have not forgotten who they are. Wonderful question. Thank you.
I have a question for you. I'm going to give some background before I ask the question. Recently, there was a Metro officer who was indicted for sexually harassing several women. They were some called in for domestic violence, and he would go in with the officers, and when they left, he would stay behind, and he would, harass and grope and take photographs of the women. He was indicted, and he was given a bail of $16,000, and he was given house arrest. My question to you is, if you are elected as sheriff, in the future when officers commit crimes, will you work with the district attorney and say hold back the Police Protection Association to be fair in the punishment they give officers, because civilians for similar crimes and lesser crimes, the charges are a lot more.
Absolutely.
Not the charges, the punishment.
Let me begin with the first part of your question. How do I think? Who is Larry Burns? Well, he's a guy who has 8 kids. He's a guy with 2 grandkids. This is my oldest daughter, Alexis, right here, and my wife of 30 years, Annie, right here. When I think for a moment that there is anybody with any level of authority, whether it be a school teacher or a police officer, that takes advantage of that authority in their position, and that potentially those that I love the very most would be victimized by somebody like that, it makes my blood boil. They tarnish the badge that we wear, and as far as I'm concerned, the full level of punishment it should be expected there. They know what they're doing for a living. They've got issues in their mind that would cause them to do things like that and get the heck out of that profession. Because let me tell you something, there is no tolerance for that nonsense right there. And so when I don't know those women or those girls, but I'll tell you what happens to me is within many situations, I do a transposition and I see these faces. And I'll tell you what, not on my watch. I hope that helped to answer that question, but it's a good question. Thank you.
One more.
Yes, ma'am. You get the last one.
Can you tell us who makes the policy on paid administrative leave for officers who are being investigated, and what is your personal policy on that?
Well, ultimately, it's the sheriff who has final say on signing off on that. There have been some adjustments in it, situational awareness. So, back to your question. So I will tell you this. One of my tenets is that on internal investigations, as it relates to use of force, as an example, which is where we have a lot of paid administrative leave, it takes forever for these things to be investigated and dealt with. It is bad for the officer being investigated. It is bad for the department, who is without the services of that officer during the time that they're being investigated. And it is bad for the community because they're waiting for an explanation as to what occurred and what our feeling is on that. There are many departments in which you use a significant amount of force. Now, I don't believe in this, but within a couple of days with a short review, literally a couple of shifts, and you're back on the beat again. I disagree with that for a lot of reasons. But I certainly disagree with month after month after month of
Or
paid
years.
or years of paid administrative leave when it's absolutely not necessary. The only way to get around that within the rules of civil service, current contracts, is to make those investigations happen faster. And that's one of my tenets. It's in my brochure. I hope you'll take one tonight. But I commit to that as tenet number 3. So, pardon me? Yes, get them doing something. And absolutely, I don't know if I can take another question. You want me to
We'll open it back up again.
Okay.
Once everybody's spoken, we're gonna have another question and answer. Just have to fall that way in the stack. David's family moved here in 1975. He graduated from Las Vegas High School and then attended UNLV where he graduated magna cum laude. He received his master's degree in security studies from the Naval Postgraduate School. After serving in the Uncle Sam's Marine Corps, Ted joined the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. He was promoted 5 times and reached the rank of assistant sheriff in 2008. Ted's happily married with 1 son. His wife Sal, their home, pronounce the name right. Is a small business owner. Please welcome Ted Bodie.
See if I can master the microphone as well as Larry did.
Yes.
Is that about right? Right there? Okay. Well, good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year. I want to thank Kathy Lynn and Art and anybody else who helped make this evening possible. I want to thank all my fellow candidates very much. And I want to thank each and every one of you. It truly is an honor and a pleasure to be here with you this evening. The sheriff's race is very personal to me, and I would like all of you to know why. My family did come to Las Vegas in 1975. I graduated from high school here in 1979, spent 4 years in the United States Marine Corps, and came home to Las Vegas in 1983, and within a couple of months I was hired by the Metropolitan Police Department. I spent more than 30 years on Metro, and during that time I raised a family. I got my bachelor's degree at UNLV, got a master's degree from the United States Naval Postgraduate School. I am very proud of my wife, Zhao Hong, who's owned and operated the same small business at the same location in Las Vegas for almost 15 years. We're both very proud of our 3 boys, actually. In fact, my oldest son, Michael, would like to join the Metropolitan Police Department as an officer one day. So I have a real stake in the future of this community, and I have a real stake in the future of the Metropolitan Police Department. I worked my way up through the ranks at Metro. When I chose to leave in July of this past year, I was the assistant sheriff for operations, which made me the number 3 guy on the organization. I had developed a solid reputation inside Metro as a strong leader and reformer who could effectively develop and implement change. And of the many wonderful programs that we worked on together at Metro, because none of us ever does anything by ourselves in that organization, reducing police use of deadly force became my greatest passion. In 2011, before the DOJ got here, I helped create and led the development of what is now our reality-based training program in order to help frontline police officers reduce the need to use deadly force through both innovative training and teamwork. And some of you probably know that in 2012 and 2013, I led the charge within Metro to completely overhaul and reform Metro's internal use of force review process in order to increase police accountability and transparency following officer-involved shootings and other deadly force incidents. Now, both of those programs, the reality-based training program and the Reformed Use of Force Review Board, were recently recognized by the United States Department of Justice as milestones for the Metropolitan Police Department. So all that's fine and good, but here's the most important part of my message for all of you tonight. No matter how hardworking and dedicated are those within Metro who really want to move this organization forward, no matter how impressive sounding and innovative the program, without honest, courageous, independent leadership at the top that truly places the needs of the community, your needs, ahead of those of the special interests, Metro will never get where it needs to be. In fact, Metro will continue to slide backwards in the eyes of its community. I chose to leave the Metropolitan Police Department, the organization that I love, in July of this past year when some decisions were made involving the Use of Force Review Board that I knew would be very bad for Metro, especially the best cops at Metro, and very bad for this community. Once again, the voice of the community and the voices of some of the best and brightest within Metro took a back seat to the same old special interests that continue to impede the hard-won, hard-fought forward progress of what truly is a great organization. We all know Metro's long overdue for a change in culture. And not all of that has to do with police use of deadly force, although a lot of it does. This habit and culture of the current administration of demanding more money, more money, more money as the only solution to its seemingly endless fiscal problems also has to come to an end. Before demanding any more hard-earned tax dollars from this community, Metro has got to work now harder than ever to ensure that we are doing everything that we can do, everything that we should do to reduce costs and increase efficiency using the resources that we already have, to include freeing up existing officer positions, consolidating existing police resources in order to get more cops on the street. Now, this is going to mean exploring some adjustments to Metro's business model. It's going to mean leaning out and tightening up some existing budgetary cost centers. And it's also going to mean that we as a community have to demand a sheriff, leadership at the top that has the courage and the integrity and the independence necessary to engage the Police Protective Association, the largest police union, in meaningful, transparent, and hopefully legal contract negotiations, because that's the only way that we are going to address the long-standing sacred cow issues in that process that I believe are critical to the future fiscal solvency of the Metropolitan Police Department. I'm going to leave it right there, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
I have a simple question that has to do with compensation. I'm in the private industry. I would love to make $100,000, $150,000 a year. I work enormously long hours fixing people's air conditioners, all right, in not very good conditions, 160-degree attics and stuff like that. I am very qualified in what I do. I work my butt off. I just wondering what any of you guys are going to do to try to get the compensation levels of police officers more in line with what private industry is. In private industry, as a security guard, there's no way in hell you'd be making $200,000 a year. All right? There's many on the force who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Not everyone, but many. And a lot make over $100,000. I have two police officer friends that for a very long time were making close to $200,000 a year. They put an enormous amount of overtime. I can understand that. Overtime is normal for people in the private sector. What are you going to do to try to get in line the compensation level that makes more sense, rather than this enormous amount of money that the police officers are making? All right, yeah, I understand this may be a slightly more dangerous job than I might have. I could fall off a roof and be killed any time because I work on these slanted roofs and it's very dangerous. But your thoughts on the compensation level, and if anything should be done to get it more in line with the private community?
Well, I knew I was in trouble when he said he had a simple question. I've been listening to this question. No, it is a very complex issue, and I'll tell you this, as strongly as you feel that police officers are overpaid, there are a whole lot of other people that feel just as strongly that they're not paid enough. It is a complex issue. What I can tell you is this: the only way to begin to deal with those issues is to have contract. Listen, government employee collective bargaining or contract negotiations are the community's business, and there's absolutely no legitimate reason to have them conducted in secret. We saw where that can lead to in September when we had an illegal arbitration process that was exposed, and all the publicity that got with the county commission. Got to bring transparency to the contract negotiations so that everybody in the community has a good idea of exactly what all the trade-offs are that are being discussed. How's the money that we have exactly going to be spent? Exactly what are police officers making before you add their benefits and other compensation package aspects? The only way to deal, and there are other issues too. It's not just straight across salary and benefits that are a concern when it comes to contract negotiations. There's some other key issues in that process that have to end up on the table and have to be subject to legitimate negotiation. Yes, ma'am. I can't hear you, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Gun ownership, and that you're the sheriff and you can tell the kids where to go when they come in marching in here and they try to overcome something constitutional items that
Okay, so how do I feel about the Constitution? After listening to the questions for the other candidates, I should have just said, as soon as I finished, I should have just said, yes, I'm a constitutional sheriff because I believe in and completely support the Constitution. I'm not going to allow anything to happen to violate it. I am a strong supporter of the Second Amendment and its right for citizens to bear arms. Yes, sir.
Dovetail off of his question, it's not really a question. A whole bunch of people are trying to figure out how to compensate comparable money to firefighters who work a quarter of the time and half the risk for double the money. But that's a whole other story.
So I think the gentleman is saying that firefighters make comparable money to police officers.
Double the money for half the risk and quarter of the time.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
But my actual question is,
Thought I was going to get away easy.
the first part was a joke. Wasn't that funny? No one laughed. You know, my question is, a lot of departments are going to a system where they over-regulate use of force, where anytime an officer draws their weapon or takes out their patrol rifle, they have to write a report, which pretty much is a disincentive for them to do those things even when they probably should. So what's your opinion on actually requiring reports for just deploying defensive measures?
Well, listen, especially when it comes, there was a question asked earlier about the militarization of the police in the United States. That question was very narrowly defined and focused on SWAT teams. The problem of militarization of our local police across the United States involves far more than just SWAT teams. All right, and there are some legitimate reasons for the introduction of new weapons into the hands of local law enforcement. One of the weapons now that's commonly carried by local law enforcement officers that we rarely saw prior to 9/11 is the rifle, is the long gun, right? And so when it comes to deployment of rifles and things of that nature, I think there's a legitimate interest in the leadership of a law enforcement organization to know when and how those types of weapons are being deployed in a domestic environment. Now, and I'll take this opportunity to make this statement. In the vast majority of cases, when our police officers have to use deadly force, their actions are above reproach. But the only way to protect good cops, to reassure the community and protect good cops from unwarranted attacks and accusations when on occasion they have to go out and use deadly force legitimately, is to have a process in place that is credible and stable, independent, unbiased, free from political interference of any kind. Anything short of that is going to continue to fuel additional controversy. It's very divisive. It's on a path that takes us to a place that we don't want to be. It is a fallacy to believe that lax oversight of force, particularly deadly force, helps anybody, including police officers or the police organization they work for. It doesn't. Quite the contrary. Yes, sir.
But I want to ask you,
Okay.
what is the chance to have the people from the Police Protective Association make those guys go back to work? There's 9 people, 9 police officers getting a detective salary, and they doing nothing. What is the chance of negotiating that contract that has been in effect before you was born and put it back to work?
Good question. Thank you. All right, so the question is, I don't know if everybody's aware of it or not. I know a lot of people certainly are. All of the full-time reps for the Police Protective Association and the other unions at Metro are paid a full salary on the taxpayer's dime. Everybody know that? Most people aware of that? Okay? Even people who are aware of that don't necessarily know that once an officer is assigned to one of those full-time representative positions, they're classified as a detective, and so they automatically start drawing an additional 8%. So what this works out to be now in fiscal year 2014, we're in the middle of it, is about $2 million a year that the taxpayer spends to fund all of those positions. And a lot of people have a lot of heartburn with that. I have heartburn with it. But I'll say again what I said before. Without honest, courageous, independent leadership at the top that will engage